Have you realized that a tsunami is approaching? Whether we're ready or not, the grip of the Chinese Communist Party on its people is crumbling, and the days of the regime's power are numbered. When the world's longest-standing communist regime collapses, it won't merely mark a dynastic change in China. It will send shockwaves across the globe, including the West. Some of the world's biggest names and brands will also find themselves caught in the terrible aftermath. Hello, welcome to Leisrealtalk. I'm Lei. Based on everything we've seen, the CCP's collapse is imminent. When this happens, the Chinese people, after decades of suppression, will speak up. They will make sure their voices are heard, loud and clear. They will expose all of the CCP's crimes, and the atrocities revealed will be so shocking that people around the world will finally awaken to the dangers of communism. When this happens, some multinational companies will realize that the deals they made with the CCP and the money they made in China could become their greatest liabilities. This has happened to IBM and the victims of the Holocaust. In the past half-century since the end of the Holocaust, Jews have been hunting down the perpetrators who were collaborating with the Nazis. In February 2001, victims of Nazi oppression sued IBM for providing the punch card technology that facilitated the Holocaust and for covering up its activities. The lawsuit was filed in tandem with the publication of the book IBM and the Holocaust. The strategic alliance between Nazi Germany and America's most powerful corporation. The impact of the IBM case was limited because of the statute of limitations. A more recent case that will have great future consequences is the lawsuit filed by Falun practitioners against network giant CISCO in 2011. CISCO was accused of helping China's Ministry of Public Security to build the Golden Shield surveillance system, which is used by the regime to persecute Falun Gong and subject its followers to illegal imprisonment, slave labor, torture, and unnatural death. The case was dismissed in 2014 by a lower court, but in July 2023, the Federal Appellate Court reversed the dismissal because the court found the plaintiff's allegations sufficient for the case to move forward. The 2023 ruling rejected many of the arguments that companies use to justify their decision to provide tools and services that were later used to abuse people. The fact that technology has legitimate law enforcement uses does not immunize the manufacturer from liability of knowingly facilitating human rights abuses. When the Chinese Communist regime becomes history and the Chinese people seek justice, the companies that will have the hardest time defending themselves are the pharmaceutical companies involved in the organ transplant business in China. On April 20, 2006, on the day former CCP leader Hu Jintao visited the White House and met with President George W. Bush, two individuals by the pseudonyms Annie and Peter held a press conference at McPherson Park behind the White House in Washington, D.C. Annie was a nurse from Shenyang, China. She said that from 2001 to 2003, her then-husband, a surgeon, had become mentally unstable. He had nightmares and would scream if anyone, even a loved one, touched him. The husband later told Annie that he had performed surgeries to remove organs from 2,000 young, healthy, and live Falun Gong practitioners. Their bodies were cremated before they had even died. Performing these atrocities tormented him, but he was threatened that if he were to quit, his family would be in danger. Annie was very distraught by her husband's confession and divorced him. By the time Annie spoke in D.C., her husband had moved to Canada and was dying from cancer. She hoped that by exposing the crimes in Chinese hospitals, she could atone for his sins. Attending the press conference with Annie was a former Chinese journalist, Peter, who made this statement on that day. In the 3 years from 2003 to now, I spent a lot of resources and money and have finally investigated a facility in Shijiatun where a large number of Falun Gong practitioners were detained. Their corneas and internal organs, including bone marrow, were removed while they were alive. Even their hair was made into wigs. Their skin and body fat were sold. The late David Kilgour, a former Canadian Parliament member, and David Matas, an international human rights lawyer, formed an independent investigation team. Less than 3 months after Annie and Peter's press conference, Kilgour and Matas released a report confirming that at least 60,000 organ transplant surgeries were performed in China between 2000 and 2005, and that at least 40,000 of these organs were most likely obtained from imprisoned Falun Gong practitioners. Western media was fully aware of the atrocity but avoided reporting on it for 10 years, until a Fox News report in 2016. During these 10 years, the Chinese Communist regime institutionalized the crime and turned it into a lucrative business. China's organ transplant surgery was suddenly booming. However, without the help of Western pharmaceutical companies, China's organ transplant industry wouldn't have been able to take off and skyrocket as it did. China is not self-sufficient when it comes to medical devices. For example, China has been and is massively dependent on imported devices for organ preservation, and as of 2019, up to 92% of medical equipment used in China was imported. At least 20 Western companies, and possibly 28, supplied China with materials, drugs, and devices that support its transplantation business while being aware of the illegal organ harvesting. A December 2019 report titled "The Economics of Organ Harvesting in China" backs up this claim. Of the 28 companies, 17 are in the United States, including 5 Fortune 500 companies: Pfizer, Danaher, Thermo Fisher, Abbott Laboratories, and Becton Dickinson and Company. Please take a close look at the other names on the list. Here are the 10 companies in Europe, including Swiss pharma giants Roche and Novartis, French pharma Sanofi, and one Japanese company, Astellas Pharma. Danish pharma Veloxis is now owned by Japanese multinational giant Asahi Kasei. The report argues that these medical and pharmaceutical companies have profited tremendously from their links with forced organ harvesting in China. They sell immunosuppressive drugs, organ preservation solutions, and transplant diagnostic equipment to Chinese hospitals that depend on Western products for organ transplant surgeries. With the help of Western drugs and devices, organ harvesting has become a state-sponsored illicit business in China, and the CCP government isn't even shy about it. In 2023, the Henan Provincial Health Commission issued the pricing guidelines for organ transplants. The cost for an adult liver is 260,000 yuan, while a child's liver under 18 years old costs 100,000 yuan. For kidneys, a single adult kidney costs 160,000, and both kidneys are priced at 230,000 yuan. A single kidney from a child is priced at 100,000 yuan, and both at 150,000. The cost of a heart is 100,000 yuan, lungs 80,000, pancreas 50,000, and a single cornea costs 10,000 yuan. The price guideline suggests that there is a market of organs where both the supply and demand are abundant, or else there would be no need for a price guideline. In all other countries, patients have to wait for organs because casualties are sparse and cannot be predicted. But in China, a supply of organs is waiting for patients, and organ transplant surgeries can be pre-scheduled. Organ harvesting has become such a big money-making business that Chinese airports have opened express lanes for freshly harvested organs to pass through. In 2018, Danaher generated $2.37 billion in revenue from China. This marked a significant increase from $700 million in 2009, reflecting a 350% growth over 9 years. The revenue of Swedish company Xvivo from Asia and Oceania reached over $1.6 million in 2016 and 2017. Its CEO highlighted China as the fastest-growing market for lung transplantations, underscoring its importance for the company's business. Hologic Inc. generated $276 million in revenue from the Asia-Pacific region in 2018, representing a five-fold increase from the $57.1 million in 2009. Abbott Laboratories, a Chicago-based pharmaceutical company, is a key player in transplantation diagnostics. Its revenue from the Chinese market grew 50%, from $1.42 billion in 2015 to $2.15 billion in 2017, and tripled during the 5 years from 2013 to 2018. China is Pfizer's biggest market outside the U.S. In 2017, Pfizer's revenue from China was $3.9 billion, a 26% increase from the previous year. Pfizer hired 600 new salespeople in 2019 to meet the growth demand. The Swiss pharma giant Roche has 2 immunosuppressive drugs in the Chinese market. In 2018, Roche opened a research center in China to further its local footprint and collaboration. Its total revenue in the Chinese market was 4.5 billion Swiss francs in 2018. However, there are ethical concerns tied to Roche's testing of one of its drugs on the organs of Chinese prisoners. In 2020, the chairman of the CCP's Organ Transplant Development Foundation and former Deputy Minister of Health, Huang Jiefu, said that the CCP's organ transplantation still cannot meet the needs of social and economic development. As the demand for organs in China has skyrocketed, imprisoned Falun Gong followers weren't enough to supply the demand. Thus, the scope of illegal organ harvesting has expanded to include Uyghurs, Christians, and other prisoners of conscience. And now ordinary citizens are the targets. The CCP government has access to Chinese citizens' biodata and controls the world's largest biological database. This has made organ matching easy for them, and there is a kill-on-demand supply chain for sourcing targeted organ donors. Doctors and hospitals are involved in the process. There have been videos online showing parents confronting doctors about the sudden death of their children who went to the hospital for treatment of minor ailments. There have also been reports about young people being given unknown injections while getting treatment at hospitals. Young people are abducted in broad daylight, and when their bodies are found, their organs are missing. This woman lost her 15-year-old son. When she found his body, his head and 2 kidneys were missing. Each year, millions of people go missing in China, and a large percentage of them are young people. So how has China's massive Golden Shield project, which can arrest a dissident in no time, failed to find these missing people? Last December, the State Council of the CCP released a new version of the Regulations on Human Organ Donation and Transplantation. This new rule has freaked people out because by pushing more Chinese to sign up as organ donors, the doctors' illicit harvesting crimes in hospitals would be protected. Students are now forced by their schools to sign up as organ donors. E-commerce platforms have added organ donor as an automatic selection item when people agree to terms and conditions during checkout. As a result of massive numbers of Chinese involuntarily signing up as organ donors, doctors can automatically harvest their organs legally if the patient falls unconscious. That's the reason why many young people who went to hospital for treatment of small ailments ended up losing their organs. Coincidentally, following the release of the new regulations, two mobile products have appeared on the streets in China. Mobile surgery rooms and mobile cremation furnaces operating side by side, one to perform surgeries anytime and anywhere, and the other to cremate bodies immediately. This suggests that people can be murdered at any time for their organs, and there won't even be a trace. Susie Hughes, executive director of the International Coalition to End Transplant Abuse in China, had this to say about the roles Western pharmas play in China. These companies are in a very powerful position because China's transplant industry would falter without them. It is imperative they withdraw from China immediately to help save innocent people who are being killed for their organs. Just imagine the consequences when this atrocity is exposed, when the CCP disintegrates, and when the parents and siblings who have lost a loved one due to forced organ harvesting seek justice. I don't think how the pharmaceutical companies will be able to defend themselves. They can. The purpose of the pharma industry is to save lives. If a company has grown so attached to making money and is completely insensitive to the killing of innocent people, I don't know how that company can still exist. And at the very least, it won't have a Chinese market. If they have a conscience, they should immediately withdraw from China now. That's all for today. I appreciate you watching it. Please subscribe and consider making a donation to me through the links below, and I thank you.